So, with Halloween coming up, I decided to do a top 7 creepypasta video. Anyways, have you ever read a creepypasta that was just trying so hard to be scary? Like, it was almost like the creepypasta was jumping out at you and saying, you just weren't scared. Like, even after the creepypasta said, "Oh, come on, man, I'll throw in some blood everywhere. I'll throw blood everywhere. I'll even throw in some hyper-realistic stuff." Even after that, you weren't scared? Well, today we're going to look at those creepypastas. They're creepypastas that a lot of people just happen to love, but I personally just find aren't scary whatsoever. So now we're doing, for this video, the top 7 most overrated creepypastas ever. Also the year I was born. So 1999 is essentially this story about this guy who remembers when he was a kid. He was a kid in 1999, and he lived in Ontario, Canada. And he remembered a local station which aired some weird kid shows, one of which being about a bear who lured children and basically tortured them. Now, the problem with this creepypasta, everybody loves this creepypasta. Everybody thinks it's the greatest thing on planet Earth. I've seen a bunch of people have just talked about how much of a masterpiece this is. The problem is, number one, way too long. It just goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. And long creepypastas are fine if something interesting is happening throughout that long amount of time, but nothing's really happening after a while. After a while, it just becomes uninteresting. Now, one unique idea, which I think was a hit and a miss, was that he keeps updating his blog. You see, in this creepypasta, the guy, when he grows up, he decides to investigate what happened and write a blog about it. And so the creepypasta is supposed to be a bunch of blog posts, and to this date, he is still, the author of the story is still updating the creepypasta with more fake blog posts from this character. So that was a unique idea, but the problem is, if you just keep updating it every so often, then that means there's no ending. I mean, until he decides until the author gets bored of it and decides, I'll just write an ending. Or if he just ends it without it abruptly. But that was the first problem. Another problem was children getting lured and tortured. Oh good lord. As I said before, that is just a prime example of a creepypasta just trying so hard to be creepy, but just failing. So they're like, oh, what else can we do that's just twisted? Oh, I know, we'll just torture kids to death. And also the whole blog post thing, that got old after a while. After Candle Cove did it, that was probably the last acceptable, excuse to do a blog, blogging creepypasta. Now it's just the biggest cliche. I've seen so many movies about, well, I haven't seen the movies, but I always see trailers for horror movies about blogging. Oh, so scared. But let's move on to number 6. Number 6. So, number 6, ironically, just happens to be username 666. So, username 666 is basically a creepypasta where the author tells of the early days of YouTube, and he goes on and he tries to find the user 666, so he types in youtube.com/666. It says the page has been suspended, so he reloads like 50 times, and that's the first problem. First of all, why would he refresh like 50 times? Why would he refresh multiple times? Only refresh like one. I would only refresh like once or twice. But he refreshes a ton of times, and then finally, the screen turns red, and there are all these disturbing videos there's one of like an abortion or a baby dying or baby's heads or something like that. I can't remember. I read it a long time ago. And then there's another one of this woman drowning, and so he tries to turn his computer off. He goes to the shutdown button on his computer, but it won't shut down, and finally the woman's hand grabs the screen, and the computer shuts off. And so he keeps on about, oh, well, nobody's spotted it to date, but there's supposedly been rumors that it resurfaced in 2010 or whatever. Da, da, da. Okay, the only reason why username 666 people are so afraid of this creepypasta is because the username is 666. It's like anything to do with Satan. They're just like, holy crap, this must automatically be the scariest, most brilliant creepypasta ever. This must ultimately be the #1 cause of nightmares because it has Satan references in it. It has references to hell. It's so scary, right? It's just complete crap. It's so easily debunkable. And overall, it just wasn't that scary. Number 5. Okay, next on our list at number 5 is Dead Bart. Okay, a lot of people seem to be frightened by the story. Now let me explain basically what happens. Okay, so first of all, it starts out with the protagonist, and he goes to, I guess, a Comic-Con panel or something, and the guy, one of the producers of The Simpsons, is talking. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. First, he starts the story out by talking about how Fox has a weird way of counting The Simpsons episodes, and how the production codes are kind of out of order. So then he's at a panel with one of the producers of The Simpsons, and he mentions a lost episode called Dead Bart. So the protagonist goes to meet at a signing, at a fan signing. He goes to meet goes to meet the creator of The Simpsons. Now, I don't know a lot about The Simpsons. I haven't watched it, so if I get some of my facts wrong on this, I apologize. So he asks the creator of The Simpsons about the episode, and the creator gives him a URL. So he goes on, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. So he goes online, and so he enters in the URL, and surely enough, there's a way he's allowed to download this episode, Dead Bart. So he does that, and he watches the episode, and essentially the character Bart from The Simpsons, The Simpsons are on a plane trip. So Bart basically opens up one of the windows. He smashes open one of the windows, or one of the windows opens. I can't remember. And he flies out, and he hits the ground, and then it shows Bart's dead corpse. Except it's, say it with me, folks, hyper-realistic. So, after that, we then see that the Simpsons are having a funeral for him, and then we see his dead body, and then it zooms out, and we see a bunch of graves, and it says the death dates of all the people who ever worked on The Simpsons, and for the people that are actually dead who worked on Simpsons, like voice casts and stuff like that, and producers, it showed their real death date, and anybody who isn't dead yet, anybody who's still alive as of this moment, as of 2015, it said the same date. Now, this is just another generic, cliched creepypasta, which just doesn't make a lot of sense. Why would the creator of The Simpsons, if there was a lost episode, first of all, I can see why they would never want to release this episode if it were real. But if it were real, why would you give it to a fan? Why wouldn't you just release it on DVD? I believe I heard there was a lost episode of Family Guy, and they released that on DVD. So why not do that? Also, I heard the real reason why the production codes were out of order was because apparently the pilot for The Simpsons, the animation was off and they weren't really proud of it. So they basically didn't want to count it as one of the actual episodes. So yeah, Dead Bart, don't see why everybody's, so obsessed about it.